message of renaming?
Sorry?
Can you just
On the
post the
chat.
message of renaming on chat?
On the chat window.
Yeah, but people can see it only when they are admitted.
Yeah.
No, I think waiting room also it will flash.
You can see. Okay.
Yeah. Waiting room, the chat is on, so they will know.
Oh, I didn't know that. Shirish, you are like a master of this now.
No. I just doing it number of times, so whatever limited I know I'm.
Bye. So this is like, please rename yourself by clicking on the 3 dots on your
Mobile number or
screen.
yeah. Go to rename option and rename yourself with your name.
Please rename yourself clicking on the 3 dots on your screen. Select rename. Type your name, organization, so that we'll know. You want the organization?
The name and the organization. So,
Yeah. I hope the recording has started because I cannot see. I cannot see the recording button here.
So it's in the
Yeah,
left
it
hand
has started.
upper corner. It's flashing.
okay, it's sharp 4 o'clock. So
Let's admit people.
we can admit. You can remove the wall actually if you want. You can just remove that. In security, go in security and disable the waiting room so that everybody who joins in who has a connection can join in. You don't have to actually every time go and accept.
Okay,
it
so
will
I'll
keep
just
on
say
flashing.
enable.
Disable. Click on that and disable.
Yeah, it has disabled. But do I still need to admit all who are there in the waiting room currently?
Yes. Just say admit all. Yeah. Arundhati ji, you can send the rename message again so that people can rename themselves.
I think we'll have to give it orally because everybody may not read it.
Yeah.
Hello, good evening, everyone. For those who have joined, there is one request. If you can please rename yourself by clicking on the 3 dots on your screen, select the rename option, and please type your name and the organization. Request everyone to please rename themselves. The session will start in few minutes. We're just waiting for a few other people to join as well. So we'll begin the session in next 5 minutes.
Hello.
Hi, Mr. Joshi. This is Shruti here from Zensoft. Very good evening to you.
Good evening, Shruti. Nice
Can
to
you
see you.
see us? Our entire team is sitting here,
Oh, great.
and some
Great
of us
to
have
see all of
joined
you.
already.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Abhijit is joining.
I'm not very sure. He had some meeting today, but he will
Okay.
join in the middle later on. Yeah.
Yeah, I think everybody has been named as Arundhati Kadare for some technical
Yes.
reason. So
Yes, that's
just
correct.
have
So
to
we
rename
have
everybody.
joined under Akash's name.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, I think
Thank
that
you.
was some signing on thing, when I had to register on Zoom. But yes, everybody has to individually please rename yourself. Yeah. Okay, I think let's begin with the session. Good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to this webinar. I'm Arundhati Kadare, Chapter Manager for National HRD Network Pune Chapter, and your host for today. On behalf of National HRD Network Pune Chapter team, comprising of our President Anand Kaur, Vice President Aman Rajabali, Treasurer Dr. Neeraj Mankad, Shravani Uttekar, our trainee, and Jnana Prabodhini's Institute of Psychology, I welcome you all. I'm happy to see such a great turnaround to this webinar, and people from every nook and corner of India and abroad have joined as well. And I'm sure everybody is very eager to know about the deeper understanding of how psychology plays a major role for the various HR functions. Before we start the session, I would like to brief you on the instructions for today. As you would be aware, you would be just seeing Arundhati Kaddare's name on everybody's screen. You're requested to please rename yourself with your name and the name of your organization. The video for the participants will be off and the audio will be on mute as well. You can ask questions during the Q&A session. Please click on the raise hand icon if you have a question, and the host or co-host will unmute the audio. The chat box will be open and you can post your questions or share your views on the topic discussed. We would like to open the session with a video. The video has no sound, so please bear with that. I hope you all were able to see the video. I'm sure this video has impacted each and every one of us. I would only like to say, be a thinker, be a donor. National HRD Network Pune Chapter supports I Gift Life initiative to raise awareness on organ donation. If you wish to organize a session at your workplace or for more information, you can contact us. Moving on to our session of today, we have a great panel of experts with us. Our first panelist for today is Mr. Shirish Joshi, who is a veteran expert in HRM and organizational design. Shirish is an experienced consultant in organization design and strategic HR. His clients include organizations from private, public, social sector, as well as state government. He has worked with 35 organizations across a variety of domains like automobile, agriculture, education, engineering, to name a few. An alumnus of Jnana Prabodhini, Pune, he completed his MMS from Jamnalal Bajaj Institute in 1983. After working with ONGC for 8 years, he joined Thermax Group in Pune, where he rose to become the group HR head and member of the executive committee. He has been working as an independent consultant since October 2000. In this webinar, he will be bringing his perspective on the HR scenarios in the industry and lead the discussions by leveraging his vast experience in this field for building the importance of the interface between HR and psychology. So this is Mr. Shirish Joshi for you. Moving on to our second panelist for today is Dr. Anagha Labrekar. She is an expert in psychology and psychometric testing. She has a vast and in-depth mastery in various facets of psychology as the director of Jnana Prabodhini's Institute of Psychology. A passionate traveler in the field of psychology, masters in clinical and doctorate in social psychology, aiming at fusion of Eastern and Western viewpoints on quality of life, pursuing the path of positive mental health through different initiatives in profession, contributed to the field of research and academics since last 25 years. Dr. Anagha has more than 30 published articles in national level referred journals, has more than 12,000 reads on ResearchGate, written books on psychology in reader-friendly language, edited books on compilation of research, national awardee for research in psychology, has a versatile personality with knowledge and skills required for quantitative and qualitative research with its application to day-to-day life through different intervention practices, main motto being self-development for social cause. In this webinar, Dr. Anagha is going to articulate the importance, genesis, working and outcome of centric design of the various psychological tools and psychometric tests, directly impacting the crucial performance of the human working in the industrial environment. Welcome, Dr. Anaga Labrekar and Mr. Shirish. The session will be moderated by Mr. Shirish Kulkarni. Shirish Kulkarni is an industry veteran with large corporate experience of 30 plus years, helping the small and medium as a business advisor. Shirish Kulkarni has a unique mix of experience covering the current entrepreneurial advisory focus on streamlining and growth of small and medium businesses and vast experience in global organizations like KSB Pumps, TCS, BMC Software, Tata Motors, Geometric Software, Tata Consultancy Engineers, and many more for contributions in design consultancy, R&D center of an Indian automaker, internal customer management, and support as a part of internal IT group. He has exposure to the end-to-end product development lifecycle from renowned organization from inception to stabilization, and finally, outward-looking experience in service organization. Shirish has a mastery in conceptualizing transformation, opportunity, and readiness for the organization. Building the roadmap and enabling the realization, he has analyzed around 150 plus businesses and has recently helped a manufacturing setup to reorganize to become a global player with a top line increase of 300%. In this webinar, Shirish Kulkarni will be orchestrating this webinar to provide his insights on the various possible interface industry scenario, which enable and highlight the effective interface between HR as a function and psychology as a building block. So a warm welcome to all the panelists and to the participants. I would now like to hand over the proceedings to Mr. Shirish Kulkarni to take the session ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arundhati. It is a great pleasure to be really, hosting this. Wonderful and nice. Thanks for setting a good context and ground for this webinar for the role of psychology and psychometric tests for the HR professionals. I believe more than 80 individuals have already joined. A great response to see around 350 odd already registered. They would be joining or maybe seeing the recording later. At an outset, I would like to appreciate HRD and Prabodhini, JPIP specifically, to even conceptualize this aspect of bringing importance to psychology and HR. As we say, HR stands for human resources, and there is an element of human and human being within it. I would just share a couple of slides to set that context where it is a matter of the relationship between HR and as such, as we progress, we might have lost the importance of psychology. But if you can see the whole life cycle of employee within the organization, the whole subsections of HRM, human resource management, which actually entails all the business processes that any corporate, any organization have to follow, right from planning for the human resources, recruitment, performance management, learning and development, is very, very deeply and closely interwoven with an element of a human being. We actually technically call it as human resource in HRM parlance, but it's a human that we are dealing with. So human psychology, the mental state aspect of human factors, emotional state of an individual, a physical state, environmental condition, all these aspects come extremely important as far as those have to be actually taken into account by HRM. And this is a great webinar where we will see those aspects getting interwoven together. Looking at the organizational psychology as a topic which is already in place for years together, which has all these tenets of employee selections to ergonomics, to leadership, to product design, to work diversity. Everything is eventually pointing to psychology as a dimension. So it's very critical if you see any kind of a scenario that we face as a leader, as a HR leader. Those have to be connected, and I'm seeing that that important dimension will be covered. As such, in this seminar or webinar, we will focus on certain aspects which are critical for us and not the whole employee cycle. We will look at employee assessment, which is a critical element, in which we'll delve in more details about psychometric tests. We will cover aspect of selection process, employee selection process, where it is important to identify an individual for a specific role. While the third element would be where we will go in depth of employee engagement, employee well-being, or mental health, how individuals' performance, which governs, which is important from that point of view. So if you can see the stars going around, those are the focus area for this specific webinar as such. And, we have a great privilege and happiness to have Dr. Anagha, who is a very capable veteran into psychology, and it connects with HR dimension, while Shirish Joshi, who has ample amount of exposure, experience, and he will be articulating aspects of how reality brings out. So great. Going further, we will mainly focus on start with the employee evaluation dimension, where it is very critical. If you look at any aspect of any individual to be selected, maybe onboarded, taken for promotion. Those are the scenarios in which you will see that selection, employee evaluation becomes a critical element, and psychometric testing as such comes really, really important and handy in that perspective. Here I would request to Dr. Anagha to take this further to elaborate depths, designs, consideration of what goes in psychometric testing, and perspective of how it is important for us to as professionals, as leaders in the organization, to know those nuances which actually we might be using it as application, but might not be really understanding it in depth. I believe it's over to you, Dr. Anagha, for elaborating on the psychometric test as the first section.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Shirishji. First of all, thank you very much, Arundhati ji, for introducing me and giving us this platform to share our views on role of psychology in HR. Before I discuss how psychometric assessment plays an important role in personal selection and ability enhancement in this corporate world, let me introduce you to my institute. The parent trust, Jnana Prabodhini, many of you might be knowing it, has been working in the field of man-making education since last 60 years. This is the 60th year of Jnana Prabodhini. Jnana Prabodhini Sanshadhan Sanstha, the sister organization which has bloomed out of the parent trust, is working since last almost 40 plus years in the field of research in psychology, Sanskrit and Indology. Jnana Prabodhini's Institute of Psychology, which comes under JPSS, popularly known as JPIP, is working under the main research trust, doing pioneering work in psychometric assessment and psychological research. The motto of JPIP is identification and nurturance of human potential for positive social change. You can see here that there are 7 verticals of our institute, which are devoted to fundamental and applied work in the field of psychology. So applied work is very much important, and theories should not restrict them only to PhD thesis. So over the last 50 years, we have demonstrated the competence in development of various psychometric tools and applying them to different domains of life, right from childhood to adult professionals in various sectors. It's a general curiosity of lay persons and also some professionals to some extent to know what exactly psychological tests measure. I'm aware that in the diaspora today that we have, many of you may have had the background of psychology, but at the same time, just one second. Excuse me. Yeah. Let me catch up. So as I said, all of you, many of you might be knowing what is happening actually in the field of psychology, and you might be aware of the various theoretical backgrounds, but still testing is something that is not very much a cup of tea for many HR professionals, psychological or psychometric testing. So I'm just giving a little brief about it. As we know, psychometry tries to assess capabilities, attitudes, compatibilities, as well as personalities of people, individually or as a group. It can be done through paper pencil or other technology-based objective measures, now because we have technology at a handset, as well as through various qualitative techniques like situational tests or in-basket exercises or focus group discussions. The main thing is, what matters is whether these assessment types are able to provide the exact data for being used at the workplace to make appropriate decisions, because data can be generated anyhow, but whether it is useful or not. So it can be used for recruitment, promotions, doing need analysis, or also in some cases for organizational climate surveys. Many times we come across some hurdles in making appropriate decisions while trying to link people's abilities with the job requirements when we are in the corporate domain. With this context, I would like to throw some light on a test that JPIP has developed to help people connect the gap between individuals and job requirements. As the field of psychometry is too vast to cover in this in a webinar of say 1.5 hours, I'm just taking certain tools, certain tests, which JPIP has developed as unique contribution, so that all of you can get that idea or that flair of how psychometrics can really contribute. Now for this, let me tell you a small story of a person named Arun, who had applied for a middle-level managerial position. Now the position demanded someone who was obviously better in cognitive abilities because it was a managerial position, but with that, who could also get along well with others and keep his cool while facing critical issues. To identify such a person, a test like exploring emotional abilities, which has been displayed, the title is displayed here, is immensely helpful. We all know theoretically that achievement is many times the product of not just intellectual ability and performance, but it is also mediated by emotional abilities of a person. We know that emotional intelligence is a cutting across ability for better functionality. But unfortunately, it is often overlooked or neglected or kept aside while taking important recruitment decisions. Now, what does exploring emotional abilities measure? It is based on the Daniel Goleman's model of emotional intelligence. Many of you may have read his book and also studied the theory in depth. So it covers these 5 main areas, namely self-awareness, self-control, motivation, empathy, and social skills. Now we know the theory, but as I mentioned earlier, Arun was administered EEA. What sort of questions was he going to answer? Because converting a theory into a test is itself very challenging. So let's have a look at them. In exploring emotional abilities, there are some open-ended questions which try to avoid social desirability. We know how crucial the factor of social desirability is while answering such measures. You can just give a look to the type of item. Then there are some forced choice questions which prompt Arun to think deeper. You can also see that sample here. And then there are some rating scales which help him to get a clarity about his opinions and thought processes. So you can see that there is a combination of types that is involved in this exploring emotional abilities test. Of course, because qualitatively these items are different, they have to be scored differently. For example, some answers are distributed into levels of scoring, while some are directly converted into numeric values. Every area, that is these 5 areas, every area generates a separate raw score, which is converted to standard score. All areas together deriving the grand total finally, which is again converted into the corresponding standard score. So it's a long process. I'm not going in the details of that. So at the end, we get a profile of Arun's emotional abilities across the sub areas. You can see that profile here. Now, what are we going to do with this profile? How to use it? So what do we see in this? We can see that Arun is having a high level of achievement motivation, much above the average, has a good understanding of other people's emotions, empathy. He can also handle people well, social skills. He is average in understanding his own self. So just touching the demarcation line of average. However, his scores on self-control are pretty low. You can see that red mark. It is below average. It means that at the time of critical pressure creating situations or emotionally vulnerable situations, Arun may probably lose his cool and get into a reactive mode rather than selecting appropriate response. Of course, there are ways to improve these shortcomings, and that is why these tools are going to help us to identify the lacuna or the needs of the people so that we can empower them, enable them to work more properly and productively. Now, in that sense, emotional intelligence, as I mentioned earlier, is a plastic concept with a lot of scope and space to improve upon throughout lifetime. So this was about exploring emotional abilities as an example of how psychological assessment can help understand a person better. Okay, let me give you another interesting aspect which we have worked upon. We, in the sense, Jnana Prabodhini's Institute of Psychology has worked upon for decades, and which is a really unique contribution JPIP has done to the domain of psychometrics. I'm happy to share that our institute is one of the pioneering organizations who has worked upon the structure of intellect model as proposed by one of the great psychologists, J.P. Guilford. It refers to 130 aspects of intelligence, and later on they were also added a few more, but basic model was of 130 aspects, in which 30 aspects are completely devoted to, or they refer to, the rarely explored area of social intelligence. What is social intelligence? It refers to a person's ability to recognize human behavior in social situations or interactions and draw conclusions for further action. So remember, it is the intellectual abilities, not just emotions, that are involved in it. This ability is also popularly known as behavioral intelligence. As a result of humongous effort for developing standardized tools on all these 130 aspects, JPIP came up with all 130 standardized tests in 1990. But amongst them, these 30 tests in the battery of behavioral intelligence cover cognition, that is understanding, memory, convergent production, divergent production, and evaluation of the behavioral information a person receives from his or her environment. In simple words, his or her understanding of gestures, expressions, styles of interaction of the people he or she sees in the environment. So in this way, we can measure the various aspects of behavioral intelligence of that person. Now, this assessment can help not only the various hospitality organizations, but it can definitely help across work sectors and for different team leading positions, because everywhere we need this. We need behavioral intelligence. We need people who can work well, who can get along well with people, who understand what they're doing in a social connect. So you can just have a glimpse of some sample questions for this, because I know that people are very curious when they listen about a test. They want to know what kind of assessment is being done. So we are happy to share a few sample questions. You can see sample question 1. And I think there is one more. Yeah. So we are using the various pictorial or pictorial what we can say items or triggers to understand the thought process of that person with respect to behavioral intelligence. Actually, we are really happy to say that none other than Professor J.P. Guilford himself had appreciated this pioneering work through his letter, which was sent to then department head, Professor Usha Khire, senior most person. Today she is 89 years old and still working, still guiding us in the basic concepts and applications of psychometry. She had received the Fulbright Fellowship for this work. So I think that psychological assessment is something that is really, really critical while working in the human resource area. Eventually at Jnana Prabodhini, we also call it as the human source area and not resource area, because it comes from within, isn't it? It is not something that is coming from outside. So understanding this whole psychometrics in HR and applying it to the various needs of people who are who are contacting us is really our contribution as we think to the field of human resource. With this, I would like to give my presentation a small rest here and hand it over to Shirish ji for his comments.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Good evening and thank you, Pune National HRD Network. I just wanted to add 2-3 things.
I think all of us are familiar with the psychological test. So many of us have given the GMAT test or a GRE test or a selection test and so on and so forth. So of course, how to use it for a job we'll cover in a bit. But what I really wanted to highlight was that these two areas, the behavioral intelligence model and the social intelligence model, are very important, particularly now in the post-corona age where we are meeting people on the screen. So what you really have is the face of the other person. So how do you make out what he or she is feeling? And this makes even more sense when the people interacting are really not unknown to each other. So if you are known to each other, I mean, we can assume a lot of things, but if it's an unknown person, I think these cues matter. So apart from the hospitality, like being a restaurant manager or a waiter or a service manager, etc., or a nurse or a doctor, I think it's important even for negotiations, it's for client meetings and so on and so forth. So wherever the people are required to interact with not so familiar people, where you don't have a lot of data about that person, prior data, these kind of tests will really help you understand who are the people who are really competent to make sense out of the whole thing. So I will stop here and I'm going to spend more time answering the questions of application. So I will hand it over back to Shirish unless there are some questions at this point of time. So back to Shirish.
Right. Great. I think we will appeal for questions so that we can get questions. Right now, there are no questions in hand, but it is wonderful.
Sorry, I think the issue of Arundhati category name being there is still on. I think about 10-15 people still have a name Arundhati Kadre.
Yeah.
So please go there and change your name so that we come to know who you are and which organization you
Absolutely.
represent. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think there are two hands raised.
Right. We would, yeah. So we can make it interactive. Dr. Aditi, you would like to
Yes.
go for the first question?
Shirisa, thank you for this opportunity.
Right.
So the question is like, we are in a B school, so we are thinking of, using the psychometric analysis, especially pre-admission process. To understand, probably the inclination of the student. So if we are taking, a part of behavioral intelligence test here, so once the results probably are available in the hands of the faculty, so I would like to know how would the message be passed on to the admission team, for example, as an entity, and probably if the student has been admitted, can that test results be used for further planning in terms of the academics inputs to be given to the student until it goes to the placement category. So sir, if you could put light onto this, it could help us. Sir.
Yeah. All right. So there are 2-3 aspects of your question as I understand.
Yes,
so the first is, what do we do with this test at the time of pre-selection? Like, should this test be used for deciding whether a person should join or not join, or be
Yes.
admitted or not admitted?
Right.
Now that would depend on like I'm partly covering the what could have been covered in the second part, but still, if you can do some research using the test with your past students or good managers and not so good managers,
Right, sir.
and see to what extent this test differentiates good managers from not so good managers.
Okay.
And then you will come to know how important or otherwise this test or which aspect of this test is important.
Right, sir.
And then you can decide whether that should become a selection criteria or not.
Okay. Okay.
Right?
Fair enough.
You can convey the results of the test depending on, suppose you use Prabodhini's test, they will tell you how to use the test. They may train your people. There may be some licensing arrangement, whatever. And
Right.
then that also will can tell you how to convey the results to whom.
Okay. Okay.
And
okay.
sometimes what companies also do is that they have a pre-designed or a pre-decided norms, and they just give a rating of, let's say, green, yellow, and red.
Right.
So you don't have to do a lot of soul searching when you read it.
Yes, sir.
You say
Yes.
green is in, red is definitely on in, and yellow is something which you have to discuss.
Right.
Right.
Sir. Right.
And then the last question is, what do you do with this during the program of the 2 years? So you can use this skills and see, like there are, I mean, in some institutes, you teach what is called as soft skills.
Right, sir.
So some of the soft skills are connected to this aspect, particularly interpersonal reaction, right? So
Right,
this course here can be used for, emphasizing which soft skills are more important than which other soft skills and so on and so forth.
Okay.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
There's one more hand raised. Yeah.
Yeah, sir. Venkat Funny, Mr. Venkat Funny. Would you like to go for a question?
I think Venkat has raised his hand much before the the webinar started.
Okay.
So I don't know whether by mistake or yeah.
Not a problem. So we'll wait for more questions. You can put it in a chat box and we can compile them and look at them in the next question answer session. We have just now covered aspect of psychometric tests and how in the context of industrial or academic or any organizational context, as we look at human resource as human being, the abilities, capabilities in the emotional and performance dimension are getting outlined right now. So first step of understanding capabilities of these individuals all on aspect of
Akash has a question.
right. So okay, let's go to Akash for his question. Akash, please.
Yeah, hi, this is Shruti here from Zensoft. Our whole team is sitting here actually. So I wanted to ask a question to Mr. Joshi that which level of interviews is the right time to put psychometric tests? So it's like before the technical rounds start for the IT companies, or is it after, during, before the HR round, or after the HR round? I would like to understand which level, because usually what we do, we have like 2 levels of interviews, which are like technical rounds, and post that we take our HR round. All right. And then I would like to understand which level is the right time when we can introduce psychometric tests, within our process of recruitment.
Yeah. Okay. So let me not give a political answer like depends, but let me say that if you are looking at junior people where their day-to-day skills are very important, then you should finish your technical round and then go for psychological tests. But in very senior people, the technical skills are not important. The way they think, their mentality, so much. So the psychometric thing will come slight because there is no technical interview at that stage, right? So these are the two answers. If I can, I don't know whether I've answered your question.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yeah.
And the perspective of selection as such, as in the first section, Shirish ji, we have laid down the perspective of how the person, how the individual is faring into all these competencies like self-awareness, self-control, motivation. Now we have that framework where we know about this person. Now how to apply it to a job is actually the next section. So I would love to see everybody holding on to those questions further as we explain it in more details about the selection process. Typically we get so many resumes, so many individuals that we interview, and finally we are stuck. Should we take this person as a part of recruitment process? We have around 10 candidates for a promotion, competing for a promotion. Should we take out of 10, which one is the one that is appropriate for this particular role? You have a very critical organization requirement to set up an operation maybe abroad. Who is the right candidate that you want? So this selection part is what we will get into more details in this next section, and I would request Dr. Anagha to lay it down clear so that everybody is eager to know about the selection part of it. Over to you, Dr.
Shirish. Actually, there are a few questions in the chat box, but which, again, I think that they can be clubbed together after we do this how to select part of our presentation, because they are all aligned with the same query. Now, for this, instead of me again giving you a brief, I am inviting one of my colleagues who is currently coordinating our Human Resource Development Unit, Gauri Kulkarni. She is here. Gauri has a master's in psychology, and she's been working with our institute since almost last 12 plus years. And she has got in-depth experience in working with various corporate corporate field industries and organizations, right from manufacturing sector to IT sector, where she has been working for assessment as well as enhancement of soft skills for the personnel in that. And she has a very interesting example, which recently she and her team have completed for a very well-known manufacturing organization. So I will request Gauri to please pitch in and share her experience as case 2.
Yes. Thank you, Anagha, Dr. Anagha. Good evening. As Dr. Anagha just said, let me discuss one case study with you. I hope it will be useful to get a better idea about our work process. Last year, we had one inquiry from a multinational company from the manufacturing and production sector. They had to select workers from their overall line workers team for the role of supervisor. The team members had approximate work experience of 5 to 6 years and were technically sound. But as you can sense, performing a supervisor's role has its own demands and requirements in terms of additional skills and abilities. The selected ones were going to lead their production line in the company. So this selection was crucial, not only from a technical point, but also from a team point of view. And here, psychology and psychometrics comes in. The expectation from the selection process where it should be rational based on a theoretical framework as per job needs. First, we did the need analysis to define the specific needs for the job and ask different types of questions regarding where we could judge and what could be done to assess the job fit of this already recruited personnel. The selection was critical on some factors. First is practical utility. They were expected to perform to their best as per expectation in the future. For the organization, as the selection was being made from the same set of people doing the same kind of job, fairness was important. For the JPIP, the time for assessment was limited to 3 to 4 hours. So it was necessary to obtain as much accurate information as possible about the behavior of workers in that much window. From all the information we received from the company, the selection of right tools was crucial. Initially, we listed all the points that needed to be measured. According to the information received from the company, selected workers were to take complete charge of their unit in the future. So they were supposed to have a good connect with everyone, ability to provide training as per requirement, take small decisions and plan accordingly to work requirements. That means they had to work as leaders in the future. So it was inferred that if their general intelligence was also high, then it would be beneficial in critical decision making too. As per the needs described above, we decided to finalize the following sets of tools for that company. You can see, considering the requirements and available time, we selected 2 paper pencil tests whose norms were also be available. First, we used cognitive ability. The test measures capacity for observation, learning, and logical thinking. It also assesses the capacity to achieve results within the given time. The second test we used is a self-assessment test where how one behaves in a group, what one preferred is analyzed. For example, do I take the lead in the group? Do I get to make decisions while working in a group, etc. From the above test, we can understand the way an individual thinks and so can predict his or her basic intellectual abilities and general personality while acting in a group. But it is a challenge to assess how flexible a person is in actual working conditions or when working together in a group as well as in a new job. How much does he or she gets involved in it or thinks positively about the situation? It is useful to have such information for accurate assessment. For that, we plan to use simulation of group work. For this, we ask each member of the group to do a different simulation on job and then present the work done. This made it easier to understand how a particular person as a supervisor might fulfill the responsibilities that come with a new role while on the job. We first gave all these tools to a small group. This is called pilot assessment. After completing pilot assessment, we made necessary changes and then started actual assessment process. We did the same process for a total of 6 plants of that company. And for that, we created all the literature in the local language. Approximately 760 people were assessed. After the assessment, based on mutually agreed criteria and statistics, final results were provided to the organization. Such as you can see, members with the high and above average mental ability, planning, decision making, communication, etc., and those whose performance was higher on the task were identified at first step. The triangulation of cognitive ability, in simple terms, the capacity to understand and apply, was considered for this. Second is leadership qualities, means communication, motivation, or giving instruction. And last is task performance, means actually observed behavior, were considered, and then only final recommendation were made. From 760 participants, list of 240 was provided as recommended persons based on previously mentioned assessment, which was to be considered for further screening and training by the organization. After this phase, we conducted 3 days behavioral training for selected members from this group. In this, total 12 sessions were conducted. The training included a total of 11 subjects such as communication skill, planning, decision making, emotional management, etc. In a nutshell, it was a process consisting of 5 steps: need analysis, design, development of tool or pilot testing, implementation, and evaluation. The further steps included data analysis, data triangulation, results, and training of selected employees. So, in this way, we completed the process in a satisfactory way and time. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Gauri.
Yes.
I think what I would like to add here is that what she has told just now is the least that you can do. For example, if I take a job, I take the job description and then I say, for this job description, what is required? And then you need to know what is available. For example, do you want to do intelligence testing? Do you want to do personality testing? Do you want to do inclination testing? Do you want to do, let's say, hand movements issue, depending on the kind of job, right? Now, if you have little more time, or if you are really, for example, in some companies, they feel that the way they function in a certain job is their competitive advantage. If some jobs are very important for competitive advantage, then you need to do a further drilling down. For example, if you ask, let's say, 3 best performing employees and 3 worst performing employees to share their stories, how are they working, what they are doing, then you may realize that the 3 best performing employees are better than the 3 worst performing employees in certain way. For example, many times working hard, working responsibility do not distinguish the best and the worst. But there are some unique characteristics people bring. It could be in terms of knowing a particular thing, or having a particular kind of intelligence, or having particular kind of personality, etc., that these stories will tell you. And then what distinguishes the best and the worst should become the basis for selection. Because if you select something which is important for both less performing and highly performing people, then you are not really distinguishing. The purpose of psychometry in the case of selection or promotion is to distinguish. And so from that point of view, similarly, if you have further time, you can do actual testing of the best performing people and the worst performing people with whatever sample size. I mean, you can use a statistician for that and say that, okay, this is what distinguishes. So the point I'm making is what Gauri just now suggested is the shortcut method, or the, when the time available is less. Everybody doesn't have a lot of time. But wherever companies feel that these certain jobs are really crucial for us, this really makes a differentiation of our company. Those jobs needs to be rigorously tested. People in that should be distinguished, and then that should form the basis of deciding what kind of test, how much testing, and then out of the available tools, you can pick up items or pick up tools and create your own tests. So it is not necessary that every time you go to a test house like Prabodhini. So you can even go to them and tell them that, okay, develop a particular test for us. And that test itself can be of a certain type, etc., etc. And thereafter, you can keep on administering the tests. And if you make a simplified version, like I said, green, yellow, kind of red kind of a thing, then even the need for a qualified psychologist for everyday selection may not be necessary. But it all depends on how many numbers you are electing. So like say PepsiCo, things like that, who recruit waiters, etc., in large numbers. So they have this method of green, yellow, and red. But if you're recruiting few people, you require more in-depth understanding. So it depends on the numbers to be recruited, level of the job, skills required, and so on and so forth. I think I'll stop here. If there are any questions. I think there was one question on the.
I would like to add here, Shirish, just one small unit, that you are very right that certain at some points we definitely have to do a lot of discussion. We in the sense who are going to do this kind of analysis or assessment, we really have to do a lot of discussion with the apex individuals in that organization as to know exactly what they need. So it is not like generic testing is there everywhere. So there has to be a need-based development of test or test batteries. And that too, again, unless we do that pilot and everything, it is not possible to go ahead. So that much window also should be there if we want to, do that kind of work. So that's what I just wanted to
share.
Good
you said. For example, in one IT company, once I had gone as a consultant, so they gave me a test. I was very impressed. Thereafter, I came to that whether it's a peon or a CEO, they give the same test. So I think we have to be really cautious as to are we using or misusing the tool. Just because we are, we should we should not become foolish. We should not become toolish, right? So tool is not important.
Like across the counter, go and get the medicine.
So, all right.
I think.
I think there were some questions.
There are some questions. I'll just sum this session. So we have covered, going through the person's individual characteristics, ability, inclination, personality in the first section, which is about test batteries that we discussed about psychometric testing. This section we have discussed about the selection for a specific job profile or a role. There are a couple of questions that have come right now. It's what is the cost of each test for a corporate? Is the question. Is the answer open or?
So as Anagha said, if it's a pre-decided test battery, they would have a certain way of charging. If you have to develop a test or a test battery, so like there are some well-known tests available in the market, so they have a particular way of doing. So I think it must be decided between the test provider and the user as to for how many people it is required, how many times it is required, and so on and so forth. So testing is not like a ready-made product unless the tests up, like there are some tests, say MBTI, for example, or many other personality tests, they're pre-designed. And then you just say that for a certain set of competencies, I want to see what kind of personality is required, and so on and so forth. So it depends on the how customized the whole thing is, will decide the costing or the pricing.
Absolutely. All right. The next question is about a term used in our discussion, R&R, typically referring to roles and responsibilities. But here, the term is referring to repeatability and reproducibility. So can you elaborate more, is the question.
I think I will pass this on to Anagha because what I am familiar with is the terms of replicability and validity, but I don't know. There are new jargons which keep coming. So yeah. So, but yeah, I think Anagha, you can take this.
If,
So,
if
the
yeah.
person who has asked this question, I would request, because then there are many times, operational definitions are different in different people's minds.
Yeah.
So in what reference the question is being asked, if I could just get a glimpse at that, then I would
think
be able to
again, we will take it offline.
What I will do is, see, there are basically two concepts. One is, if you want to buy a test, you should find out to what extent the test can really predict what it claims to measure. That is called as validity, right?
Correct.
And the second is, if I repeat the same test after 3 months, 4 months, etc., will I get the same results? That is called as reliability. So
Correct.
if there's a standardized test, normally these two measures are available along with the test. If it's a
They're already
customized test,
established.
if it's a customized test, you have to evolve this, and for evolving this, of course, you will require a large data and sample size.
So if we are evolving a test for a company, what we do is we do the internal intra-group reliability or validity, which will be, only valid for that kind of testing within the premise of the need of that company.
Yeah.
So that is also done many times.
We will,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So we'll take one question from Professor Subhash there. Over to you, Professor.
Yes, thank you so much. It's a wonderful discussion that's going on. One question, Prabodhini must be taking many such assignments with the companies. So have you checked?
Professor, I think your voice is not properly audible.
Okay, so am I audible now?
Yeah, better.
Yes.
Better, okay. So have you gone for some longitudinal tests also? Or have you, say for example, there are some parameters on which you are testing. You have collected a sample, say 700 samples and all, and ultimately you are coming to a conclusion that these are the people who are likely, they are predicted to be doing well. Now, after that, a company might have promoted them, etc., for leadership position and all. Have you gone further to check for next 3 years or 5 years what they have been doing, what is the outcome, what is the predicted outcome for today, and after maybe 3 years or 5 years, what is the actual outcome? That is, companies typically are concerned about that. Companies, they are outsourcing this to the professional organizations like you, and they are relying. Okay, so are they getting that kind of result? So up to what accuracy rate, maybe 80%, 90%, this is what companies are getting, the results in next 3 years or 5 years? Or is it, some failure cases also that, they have been seen, people have been performing, because many times, nowadays people are highly educated and they know the purpose of psychometric test and all. And sometimes when this is pen pencil test, many times they manage those tests. So it may happen that accuracy rate may not be up to that extent, or the people may not be revealing their real self, and that may lead to some wrong conclusion, and they happen to be in position, higher level position, probably they may not be fitting for that.
I think we got the gist of it. Yeah. So Anagha can answer this question.
Yeah, I mean, there can be two answers to this. One is a practical answer and the other is a theoretical answer. The practical answer is that when we are doing this for number of industries for consistently for more than 3, 4, 5 years, there are some of our collaborative agencies for which we have been working for more than 8+ years also. So they coming back to us for next recruitment phases in itself is an indicator. We can say it's a practical indicator that they are actually benefiting out of that process. But yes, I would like to say that there is I won't say that it is a completely empirical design study, but we did work for one such organization, not from an industrial sector, but from a health organization, wherein we did this testing, I think around 5-6 years back, for identifying team leaders. And till today, we are in touch of all those employees, and we are also providing a lot of training input to them. And what we can see during our visits to that organization, that whom we had selected or suggested as to be appointed as team leaders are actually working in that position, and they are definitely contributing soundly to the growth and enhancement of that organization. So some case studies based on that have been prepared, and one research paper also was published and presented in one conference based on that data. So there are such incidences wherein we get this opportunity to do a longitudinal, continuous work with some organizations, and we do get those results. I think I'm sufficiently answered.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay,
Yes, I was more interested from research point of view also to see.
Yes, but it's a very interesting thing to know.
Okay, there's some questions whether this psychometric test apply to HR, blue-collar employees, and are there any online courses for others to understand it? That's another question that is there. I'm keeping that.
What is the first part of the question?
One is, do we administer this test for blue-collar employees?
Yeah. Test can be administered right from, what should I say, 4th, 5th standard student for selection. Like in our school of Jnana Prabodhini, people are selected based on psychometric tests. In fact, most interestingly, our school was started by 2 psychologists, and the whole battery of tests were developed for identifying gifted individuals, right? So right from that age to whatever age people are working, it is possible to test. And psychological tests are not necessarily paper pencil tests. They can also be physical performance tests.
Okay.
Right. So there are a variety of tests. And more you go into the details of the job and what you need, then the person with the technologist, in this case, the psychometrist, can help
once
you
we had
say,
used a manual dexterity test for such recruitment in one of the automobile companies for the blue collar workers.
Okay. Next question is about, is there any online course to educate HR professionals about psychometric testing, how to build it, the logic and theory behind it?
We do organize an orientation to psychological test workshop every year, twice a year. It is mostly physical because we actually have to, do some work, some teamwork and all in that. But unfortunately or fortunately, what I can say, during the Corona times, there were people who wanted the test orientation to be done, and we had to do that through the Zoom link, and that also became successful. So definitely we can plan or arrange such a orientation to psychological testing for HR professionals, provided we get a sizable number of participants for that. Thank you.
I'll take the last question because we have to go looking at the time check for the third section also. The question is about, can we use, is there any test which is ready for doing promotion related testing and selection? Is a question.
I'm saying there are a lot of people who will give you ready-made tests, right? So it is like going to a chemist for medicine other than going to a doctor.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the choice you have. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so I think let's move on. It's wonderful to see this kind of interaction. And as we move on to, we have completed the analysis of a person, selection for a specific job. And now very, very interesting aspect, which is about an individual's performance. It's about, all of us and all of the organizations want our employees to be, always be best and effective and, giving their best focus to generate highest of the outcomes, right? We as business leaders and HR leaders do definitely want our employees to perform the way. We want them to be motivated, working with almost all to be working with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where we talk about self-actualization more. But the reality might actually be different. And, we are seeing, I was going through one of the surveys, and 79% of the employees reported being disengaged in their work. So I think it's very important to look at aspects of employee engagement, their mental well-being, knowing about any early signals for us to, as HR professionals, to focus on any kind of preventive or predictive maintenance, the way that we do it for machines or automobiles. Can we actually look at any way that we can get some early hints about an individual being disconnected. So I think this is the focus that we have in the third section. I would hand it over to Dr. Anagha to take it to in more details.
Yeah, thank you, Shirish ji. I'm seeing many questions in the chat box also regarding earlier sections. I'm going to give the email IDs of myself and both of my colleagues so that some questions can be also later answered too through mail for the particular questions. Okay, so coming to the point you have raised right now, it's a very important issue, especially in the post-corona days, to be alert about the emotional and mental health of our employees, because that definitely is and has been actually influencing performance of that person as well as the total quality of life of that person, which also matters a lot when it comes to the employer-employee engagement. So we have come up with a very interesting tool. Every tool has a story behind it, and I'm tempted to tell this story, but of course I'm not going into the details. But when we were working with one of the very senior IPS officers for one research project on quality of life of the police personnel and ITBP and CISF personnel, we thought that such a tool is gravely needed, and that actually triggered for development of this mind search tool, which now is a standardized tool and it is being used widely. But again, as I said, many of my colleagues are actually in the use of that test. So I would like to invite here Dr. Deepak Gupte,
Hello.
One of my
Hello.
associate members, to brief us about what mind search is. Dr. Deepak is by education medico. He's done his doctoral, what we can say, his BAMS, Bachelor's of Ayurvedic Medicine. But later on, he has shifted out of his passion for psychology. He has shifted to psychology and also did his master's in that. He is one of our prime associates who is working with the corporate sector requirements that we get from time to time. So Deepak, hand it over to you.
Yes, thank you. Last but not the least, about our own mental health and mind search tool that we have just discussing. So the importance of mental health is most crucial in current times, as Anagha just said, especially in the post-pandemic scenario. And one of the important factors regarding mental health is the persons who go unnoticed. They are in their preliminary condition, but they get unnoticed. And this can prove costly, not only to the person, but to his or her family, as well as to the whole organization also. So let us take one example of, say, Rajesh. Now, Rajesh works in a health sector, and that is one multi-speciality hospital in middle management admin role he is doing. And in his mid-40s, he's experiencing some vague health complaints, just like consistent fatigue, disturbed digestion, recurrent infections, low energy, low mood, etc. He is coming a bit late to work at times due to it, and his colleagues are now finding him more irritated than before. So this is what he is experiencing. Being in the health sector, he underwent all medical tests, but without specific diagnosis. And as his boss knew JPIP very well, Rajesh was referred to JPIP. JPIP expert talked with Rajesh, took the history, what is going on and all that. And he referred, as you're seeing on the screen, mind search tool to Rajesh. A few questions about self were to be answered through this mind search tool. And what does this tool is all about? It's a test to determine whether you have any pre-morbid signs of anxiety or depression, and whether it is affecting your productivity at work, or whether you're feeling in control of your life or not. That can be determined by this tool. It's a self-report checklist with 51 items, 20 minutes about to solve. And as shown on the slide, Rajesh rated himself on 2 dimensions, intensity as well as frequency. There were some statements like, my head is itching. So intensity, if the headache is so severe, then the intensity will naturally be on the higher side, that is 3 or 4. And if the frequency is also very more, then it will be on the 3 or 4. But if the frequency is less, he can rate it on 0 and 1. There are for some more statements like I can complete assigned work without delay, or I feel uneasy when in an important meeting. All such statements were to be answered by the person who is experiencing the issue. Now, the results show something interesting about Rajesh. You can see the graph on the left-hand side, there is a frequency dimension, and right-hand side, there is intensity dimension. These are 6 unhealthy domains that we can see in this test. And what we can see is depression, anxiety, social behavior difficulties, unhealthy thought and emotion, behavior issues, and psychosomatic disturbances. The last line is important. Higher the score, higher the possibility that the person is facing that difficulty. So you can see on frequency side, it's below average, or it's okay for Rajesh. But on the right-hand side, the intensity levels are high. Psychosomatic disturbances, the last red mark in the slide, it's almost touching the 100 mark. So Rajesh has this kind of issues that the report is saying about his health conditions. With this, thankfully, this has not affected his productivity and autonomy as yet. These are the healthy domains that the test measures. They are productivity and autonomy. And as you can see, higher the score, healthier the experience and the functioning of the person. So Rajesh is functioning quite well, okay, we can say. But as he's experiencing psychosomatic disturbances and intense, maybe some anxiety issues, he must be monitored. From the history and mindset test, it was quite obvious that Rajesh needs counseling and even psychotherapy also. Right now, he's continuing with his work, so there is no need of medicines or psychiatric intervention, and he's in moderate state. So that is really fine, but he should be monitored and supported. This is something he's not doing deliberately, but is happening because of many reasons like family issues, stress, age, some biochemical changes. There are various reasons, but to find it out on time and intervening on time is very important. Timely support and professional help is of immense importance here. So Rajesh opted for counseling, and with counselor's support and Rajesh's work on himself, he came out of this phase of his life. So he managed these issues well. Just like Rajesh, many people in an organization go unnoticed. They face action or they can commit harmful acts. Actually, they need psychological support most of the times. Here, internal factors, that is what is going on inside a person's mind, that they are to be understood by various data points. The mindset test is one of the critical data points here. Employee engagement can also be observed through this internal lens of mindset test. And as we can see, there is a gray area between a clear-cut psychiatric disease, that is black, dark area, and positive psychological health on the right-hand side. A zone, this gray area is the zone where distress is present in the pre-morbid form, or as Shirish sir said, predictive maintenance, we say, right? So identifying such individuals is of immense importance and is possible through JPIP's standardized test mind search, as well as maybe some other tests also, but timely detection is very important, and it can be supported by counseling, guidance, and lifestyle changes, thereby helping the employee be mentally healthy. This leads to mentally healthy organization and as well as healthy productive employees. So this is the gray area, which is of immense importance to HR professionals, where you can find patterns of disturbances in employees, like maybe less productivity, which is linked to emotional stress, and you can act accordingly. This is where the mind search test comes as a helping hand. So as a responsible HR professional, we appeal to you to look into this psychological aspect of your employees. no stigma, no defense, but rational support to the use of science. And it will be helpful not only to the employees and their families, but your organization and the climate you daily are going into. So this test is a tool or a window to look into this area of our life. And with this, I stop my presentation and over to you, panel. Thank you. Thank you.
Great, I think great insights share, and it's very critical element of any individual to get dissected, and specifically in the pandemic situation where things get truly stressful for an individual, not only to perform, but being in kind of a work from home environment. There are a lot of stresses that are hidden for that individual to be able to perform the duties. It is interesting to see that, you know, such a dissectful kind of insightful and very detailed kind of analysis could be done for an individual. Dr. Anagha, you have some insights that you want to share on this topic?
Unless there are any questions.
Yeah, questions. There are some questions that I will pick quickly. I think there is one question which is about similar to JPIP tests. There are a fleet of other tests which have been heard, specifically Big 5, OPQ 32, MBTI, FRO-B. The question is, how does one decide to go for those tests or JPIP's tests? And
No,
how does that
not a
get
question
rated?
of ZPIP's tests or tests which are developed by other well-known entities across the world. The main thing I think one should consider while selection is to whom these tests are being applied to and whether comparative norms are available. Because sometimes it may happen that if a test is developed, yeah, Shirish is also back. I think he can also give his comments.
Yeah,
Do you
I
want
thought.
to give the comments right now? I'll add on later.
Yeah, so there are two aspects to it. One is that if the names of the test that you have given, there are two kinds of choices. One, for example, let's say there are some ability tests and there are some personality tests. Let's take an example. All right. Whether you want to test ability or you want to take personality, you want to test both, will decide whether you take both these tests or only one test. The second selection, which is slightly more difficult or tricky, is that in the same domain, say personality. So MBTI is also a personality test, FRO-B is also kind of personality test, PQ, CQ, what is CPQ, whatever is the personality test, Big 5 is the personality test, and they are measuring almost same or similar things. So this is like saying that I want a soap, and then should I buy a Surf, a Lux or something else. So it's like selecting a brand out of a generic. Now there is more of a commercial decision and what exactly that test prior performance is, what your experience is, are the interpreters available, and so on and so forth. So one is the two-stage answer. One is what are you measuring? Is the test measuring that? Secondly, if there are multiple tests measuring or trying to measure the same thing, it's like selecting a brand of a product. Anagha.
Yeah, so I will just add with the example that we have given is while we are selecting from different brands of soaps, we also have to see which brands is suitable to my skin, you know. So that's what I was adding, that when some tests have their normative data completely based on a population which is not actually representing the population with which we are dealing. So generally what we should see is whether for all these tests, the Indian versions are available or not. If the versions which are based on Indian data, Indian norms are available, well, you can go ahead with any kind of test that suits your purpose, as Shirish has told. What ZPIP has been looking for while working in the last 45 years is that developing indigenous tests so that people don't have to look outside, you know. So what we try to do is take as much as sample possible from various sectors, make it as representative as possible for the Indian population. But of course, as I said, there are many other tests which have been adopted here, translated, cross-translated, and the Indian norms are also available for other tests. So one definitely has to see what is the suitability of that test to the purpose.
Wonderful. one kind of instinctive question has come. Is there one answer for all? All these tests are there, but is there one that can suit my purpose? Or in other words, that somebody has asked, Shirish, you have been having so much of experience. Do you think that these tests are completely sufficient for the purpose? So I think we have answered it. I think you've answered it earlier, where it has to be specifically created for the context, for the organization, for the role, for the age group, for the kind of context of the organization. I believe that is the message. Let me bring it to the closure. I'm sure each one of us is thinking about our own organization and how my role eventually is getting satisfied. If I'm HR, how I will apply those aspects that we have learned through the experts, Dr. Anagha and Mr. Shirish Kulkarni, in this in-depth discussion. So let's sum up. There are three aspects that I would say we can sum it up. One is psychology is a key and baseline, and sometimes hidden element that we have lost in the way that we call HR as human resources and calling it as human being and with psychology. So that is one. Point number one, each one of us should ask for more in-depth knowledge and psychology dimensions as we move along. There are a lot of ready tools, techniques, interpretations, approach available that we need to suit to our organizations, our purpose. That is the second kind of takeaway I have. The third one is that we have to be formally exposed and trained to this application of psychology and psychiatric tests. So I think that's the way that I would sum up. We can take any nuances of. We have just covered three aspects of psychometric testing to assess the individual, employee selection process, and employee engagement. Right, going back to the first circle I showed about the complete life cycle of the employee in an organization as a whole. So with this, I would call it as a tip of the iceberg, and I would like to thank again for the audience to join in, and I'll hand it over to Arundhati ji for the formal closure of this session.
Thank you, Shirish.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shirish. Thank you, panelists and the participants, for your inputs and the questions that you all have asked. The session was very informative, and I'm sure there are multiple takeaways from this session for all of us, and also to implement it. Feel free to contact the JPIP staff, and Dr. Anagha has already shared the details, her contact details, and I would urge everyone to please get in touch with her and see what best can be done for your organizations. We will also be very happy to receive your feedback on today's seminar, and the link will be shared with you all soon. Before I hand over the baton to my colleague for the closing remarks and vote of thanks, I would like to make an announcement. National HRD Network Pune Chapter cordially invites you all to attend a panel discussion on redefining engagement through crisis. What can we as HR professionals learn from COVID warriors and their managers? This session will be held on Friday, 29th of July, from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at Firodia Hall, Department of Physiotherapy, Ferguson College campus, Pune. This is an in-person event, and I would really request, participants to please attend this event. This is again going to be a very insightful and a thought-provoking session. So everybody is cordially invited. I would like to thank our gift sponsor, Access Corp, who have launched their exclusive skin product range called Exotic Touch. The panel members will soon receive their gifts from our gift sponsor. I would now like to invite Dr. Neeraj Mankad for the closing remarks and vote of thanks. Over to you, Neeraj.
Thank you. Thank you, Arundhati. And a very good evening to all my panelists and the guests here today on this webinar. It's actually a very beautiful weather today in Pune, so we would have loved to be, physically present in the FC College or wherever great venues that NHRDN normally hosts these sessions. But as they say, inshallah, that day will also come. I think at the beginning, let me begin by thanking the entire team here. especially the Jnana Prabodhini team for reaching out to us and giving us this kind of an idea of starting a collaboration between NHRD and yourself. So a very big shout of thanks to all of the team there, Dr. Anagha, Sumedha, Dr. Deepak, Gauri, etc. From your team. Thank you so much. May we all have a virtual, maybe round of applause for them as well. I'd also like to thank today's panelists, without whom we would not have, had the enlightenment and the understanding of quite a few complex issues. Especially for me, the key takeaway was a lot of testing related discussions that happened. So thanks to Dr. Anagha once again, Shirish Joshi sir, and Mr. Kulkarni sir for taking this discussion on so lively. Also a big shout of thanks to once again to Sumedha, Gauri and Dr. Deepak for their inputs and their support during this. This would not have been possible without the Zoom link that we saw and the support from our NHRD and IT team at Delhi, led by Avinash Khurana. So Avinash, thank you as always. You are our go-to man when we need this. So a warm thanks to Avinash as well. Thanks also to the three warriors who were there behind the scenes and made it possible that we had such a large audience and many more who will now be joining us through the recordings that they would be seeing. So the leader of the warrior team, Arundhati, a big thanks to you. Also our two interns, Mansi and Shravani, for the help and support that they did. Nothing was possible without the backing and the motivation and the support by our President Anand and Aman here. So thank you, Anand, Aman, for setting the tone, context, and the push that you gave all of us to take this here. But all of us together would like to thank this wonderful audience, and we all know how many numbers we reached during the peak of this webinar. Despite everything now opening up so well, but we still have all of you coming here and joining. So thank you so much from the bottom of our heart, and you really made whatever we did very worthwhile by joining us here. So give yourselves a big round of applause as well. So with this, on behalf of NHRDN and on behalf of the JPIP team here, I would like to thank each one of you for joining us and bringing this to a closure. Arundhati, if there's anything else that I've missed and you would want to carry on.
Neeraj, I think you have covered it all. And just before we sign off, I would request all the participants to turn on their videos and we could have a nice photo. And I would also request the JPIP team to stay back for some time. And yeah, so if everybody can please turn on their cameras, we'll have a quick photo session. Thank you.
And we do have our own dear Aman here who has joined us, but
Yes.
Fortunately, due to a bad throat, we are not able to hear his shairi or his witty remarks that he normally gives. So we would miss that, but Aman, for another day.
I have been trying to push him, but his throat is really bad. He cannot speak. So we'll have this wonderful voice in our next session.
Yeah.
Can all of us please come on the screen?
Everybody has not turned on the video, looks like.
I think Arundhati, you should have given a little bit of, prior notice. People would have done some lali lipstick and,
Yeah.
presentable for the camera.
Fine. So I think we can just click a picture.
When it will be the next time these 2 sessions per annum that you are arranging, where will be the next location?
Yes.
Twice a year that you are arranging this in-person, this type of seminars.
That is the question more from our Dr. Anagha. I believe she said that yearly twice that session is organized.
Yeah.
So Dr. Anagha. It's for Dr. Anagha.
It's organized at Pune, but as I said, if there are people from outstations and if online is comfortable for them, we can definitely go ahead for that also, because now we know how to implement that technique.
What are the minimum numbers you require to arrange in respective location?
If it's offline, physical, not more than 30. If it's online, not more than 40.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I think, yes, I had clicked some pictures, and thank you once again to everyone for taking out time on a Friday evening and attending this session. Have a wonderful weekend. See you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.